Hi there, everybody. I want to take a couple of minutes to go over the symbology challenge and just make sure that cartographically we're all on the same page. And that way the feedback that we give you, if it doesn't make sense right now, hopefully will make more sense. So I'm just going to show a few examples. I think all these students did great in their own ways, and go over this list of things that we're kind of looking for and want you guys to work on as we work through the semester. Obviously, the main goal here is to get you symbolizing the correct data. And I just want you to remember, when you symbolize by attribute, whether it's a value or some kind of categorical field, you have to tell ArcGIS which attribute in the table you want to draw on. So double check that. And then, we're just looking to see you experiment with either increasing the size of the symbols as the values increase, or having a color ramp that very clearly increases in intensity or contrast as the values increase. So not a categorical color ramp, but a sequential color ramp. And those are the things we're looking for. So either color, like this, and you can see here that the red is very visible against the base map because the base map is so light colored that really works to attract our attention to the highest emitters. Or by size, or by both in this case. So increasing in size and then manually applying a color ramp that increases in intensity as the values increase. And then the things we've talked about before that are very important, like units. Don't put values in a legend unless you include clear units for them. You want to make sure that your legend items are fully edited and cleaned up, so no underscores, being consistent with capitals. Watch your spelling, a little bit of a spelling error there, not in the title though. Data credits, simplified values, and then, basic alignments and text hierarchy. So what we're talking about is, I thought this map did a really nice job of cleaning up the values. So instead of having, not only the full per ton value here with lots of decimal places, but cleaning it up and going through and multiplying those out so that you could report millions of tons with much smaller manageable numbers. And you could even round these even further because we're trying to give a distribution of the emitters in the state with a general ballpark of their emissions and how they relate to each other. How much higher are these emissions than the lower emissions? Okay, and then on this next map, I just wanted to point out that in ArcMap, it symbolizes using a range of values, and in ArcPro it uses this less than or equal to, which cleans it up a lot too. And I think a lot of you took the time to simplify these values, to get rid of the decimals, and to reduce the number of significant digits. And that really helps clean these up. And again, just notice that we've got units and a really strong text hierarchy. I applaud this student for using a bold title, simplifying down, and then using gray and a smaller text to really move the supplemental information low and make it lower contrast. And then, I acknowledge that it is really challenging to work with legends, so I just want to remind everybody to use the ungroup function if you need to. You can convert this to a graphic, ungroup it, and work with the pieces individually. Or, take your symbology and paste it into PowerPoint and do all of your text editing and labeling there. And then you can bring in the legend as an image and put it back on your map if you want to. And then as far as the professionalism goes for cartography, I want you guys to think about how the symbology shows up against the base map. So this is called a thematic map, where we're really just kind of demonstrating the spatial distribution of values across the landscape. And so we probably want to have some kind of a base map that shows us navigational things like roads, boundaries of the state, landmarks, things like that. The terrain here isn't as important to the story of the emissions, arguably. And then the other thing, if you look at the map and kind of squint at it, it does have a lot of reds and warm colors in it. And so the oranges and reds fade into the background for me a little bit more, and the blue are the points that stand out a lot. And so that a little bit works to the opposite effect of drawing our attention to the lower emitters, which is just fine. But I want to bring that to your attention, that you can use color contrast and light and dark contrast to draw your audience's eye to the symbols that you want them to focus on. Here, using very, very dark points for the high emitters against a very light base map is very effective in drawing our eyes to the higher emitters. Another really nice adjustment here on these values, taking the time and making the steps to calculate percent of maybe the total emissions to normalize these a little bit is a really smart move. Visual hierarchy, again, using the gray to downplay data credits and author, using bolding. You want to keep your symbology large on the page, but then there's that overlap or the trade-off that you have to make between symbols overlapping and then making them very visible on the page. So that is kind of a catch-22 that you have to wrestle with. I think we want to see you really framing the state. This is data that covers Utah, and if you make that Utah boundary very obvious, it reinforces that part of the story. And then we want you to work on being very careful about telling your story as efficiently as possible. Annual CO2 emissions in 2017 in tons per year. Again, if Utah was very obvious here, and I think it's fairly obvious, but framed, just if you focus on the framing of Utah or just threw Utah in here somewhere, even though it's very obvious and visible, but this is a minimum number of words necessary to tell this story. The annual CO2 emissions, what year it was, and the units for the values. Nice clean values, rounded well. So yeah, focus on some of these things here. You can reference this list. I can post this if you want to, but these are the ways we're trying to get you to dial in a cartography to really produce professional results. All right, questions, let me know. Thanks.